Yeah, okay. All right, I would like to call the March 14th, 2023 regular council meeting to order at 9:02. It's good to see the attendance of the public here today. I know that it's probably the biggest, well, it's not probably, it is the biggest delegation I've had in council chambers, and I guess we have people outside of council chambers attending online. Good to see the public engagement and the public attending to see what your council is doing and how we conduct our business here. A couple of housekeeping rules just to keep things in order here. We are online, so the meeting is being recorded, so bear that in mind in making your comments and stuff here. The other part is I will just go through our procedural bylaw here for council meetings, and it's in regards to public conduct at council meetings. When in attendance at council or committee meetings, members of the public must maintain order, decorum, and quiet, and must not approach or attempt to address council or the committee without prior permission being granted, or disturb or interrupt the proceedings of council or the committee meetings. The chair may order that a member or members of the public be expelled from the meeting for disturbing or interrupting the proceedings of council or the committee, or for otherwise acting improperly during the meeting. Okay, cell phones, if you have cell phones, this includes councillors, please turn them off. We do impose a $50 fine to the charity of your choice if the phone does ring, payable on your way out the door here. And please minimize the use of cell phones, both from administration and council during the meeting, in order that we may give the meeting our full attention here. With that, I will proceed to the adoption of the agenda. Item 2.1, adoption of the March 23 regular council meeting agenda. And we'll start with Councillor Naka. Any additions?
Nothing from me.
Councillor Wawarwa?
No, nothing for me.
Councillor Wick?
No additions at this time.
And Councillor Waiters?
Yeah, in camera, labor.
So we'll go to 11.2. Okay. Anything else, Councillor Waiters?
No, that's it.
All right. Administration, do you have any additions to the agenda?
Mr. Reeve, no additions. We will be providing some handouts with regards to the delegation from the Drahomanov Society that came in after the publishing of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. If there's no additions to the agenda, I will ask for a motion to adopt the, I guess it's the March 14th, 2023 agenda, not the February 28th. Councillor Wawarwa?
Yeah, that Lamont County Council adopts the March 14th regular council meeting agenda as presented, as amended. Sorry.
Questions or concerns? All those in favor? It's carried 5-0. We'll move on to item number 3 of the agenda, adoption of the February 28th, 2003 regular council meeting minutes. Council's had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any errors or omissions noted? Seeing no hands raised, I will ask for a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Councillor Wick,
I make a motion that Lamont County Council adopt the February 28th, 2023 regular council minute meetings as presented.
any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's carried 5-0. And adoption of the March 2nd, 2023 special council meeting minutes. Councillor Naka,
I move that Lamont County Council approve the March 2nd, 2023 special council meeting minutes as presented.
questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's carried 5-0. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4 of the agenda. Delegations, and 4.1, we have the M. Drahomanov Moscow Hall Liberty Society delegation. If they could come forward.
Other place if you're sitting, you're missing a couple.
You've got some other people with you?
Yes.
I'll go and see.
Get your whole delegation, yeah.
It was school for 9:30, eh?
Mr. Reeve, if it's a concern, this one was identified as a time specific at 9:30, so you could probably go to 5.1.
Is the expectation for it to be at 9:30, John?
Yes.
9:30.
Oh, here they are.
Jim and Virginia.
Is this everybody?
No, I just have one.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't
No,
know.
we need one chair.
No, that's his. I need, I'll give that one to him. I highlighted his. I highlighted some stuff in yours. So.
You made it.
Marty?
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Am I on now?
Just hang on, we're waiting for a chair for, okay, just the rules of order for the delegation here. You have provided us with a pretty lengthy narrative in regards to the background here. As far as your verbal presentation, you will have 15 minutes to make your verbal presentation here today. And then we'll allow probably 10 minutes for question and answer period if council has any questions or anything. So I guess if you're ready, we can proceed.
Good morning. My verbal presentation is going to be short, so we can have more time for questions. And obviously, it's pretty lengthy because I'm a single finger typer and my finger's still sore. I'd like to introduce the board of the Moscow Center. Jim Zook is the president. Virginia Bedinsky is the vice president. Kathy Chomiak is the secretary. Leonard Babin, next to Kathy, is the board member and a former president. Unable was our treasurer, Tracy Zook. And Marion Babin was, so we're missing two. On our behalf of our board, we appreciate the, I'm going to read so I don't go too much at a time because I get carried away at times. On behalf of our board, we appreciate the opportunity to present to council that we represent a dynamic community where the land and facilities are available to the general public at all times. For us to sustain such a high level of energy the required volumes of extensive sweat equity of volunteerism is required to sustain the need. This passionate board, as well as previous boards, along with members at large, have continuously generated overwhelming sweat equity in the form of volunteerism to ensure that the quality, operation, maintenance, and preventative maintenance is continually second to none. Councillors received a lot of information from us describing our openness to the general public, samples of events and usage of the park, including the hall portion. The park and the hall, which includes the monument, are like two peas in a pod, feeding off each other. This is good to which attracts public use, and many occasions the cross-pollination element plays a positive catalyst for both. Therefore, to portray to all adequately the earlier part of the presentation, I attempted to describe along with supplementing pictorially. It took its toll in a number of pages. My apologies. I was sensitive to the fact that the age of the Moscow Center in its totality, and of course, there was a continuous evolution of county staff and councillors over the many years. Therefore, a short briefing history was essential for all of us to be on the same page. Since I was aware that this type of grant was initiated in the early 80s with the assistance of Tracy Zook and Kathy Chomia, we researched the grant flow of money. This was an interesting task, and I will not dwell into it since it's well explained in the document. However, there was a common thread echoed by both the Alberta government and the Lamont County councillors, where the essence of both messages meant the same, but a bit of different language. The Alberta government language: this grant will help to operate the facilities and programs that enrich our quality of life and will help to ensure the long-term viability of this project. The Lamont County Councilor's language: Lamont County Council believes that providing financial assistance for the recreation area is definitely a worthwhile cause, as they wish to see the area continue to operate. I will now invite Virginia Budinski to make a statement. Virginia is a tireless volunteer who for over 50 years has been a significant backbone member in the leadership of the center. Her sweat equity value today will be so high as to boggle our minds. Virginia? Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Diduck, Mr. Warwa, and councillors. Just a little history of the park. In 1985, the Alberta government decided to give 5 counties throughout the province of Alberta $100,000 to build parks. Lamont County was one of the 5 chosen. They wanted to be out in the quiet country. We were delighted that Moscow Recreation Area was chosen. The province drew up their plans, gave us 5 years to complete. We completed in a year and a half. Grand opening was 1988, with 25 years of $20,000 a year for upkeep. So it belongs to the county. After 25 years, the county was to look after our yearly maintenance. We thank the county for all the previous support. Hence, we are all Lamont County. Thank you.
Thanks, Virginia. On behalf of our board, we urge this council to support the following. 1, to have the council reinstate the 2022 grant, which was declined without reason. This negative message is harmful. A, financial viability of the park. B, this board is working hard to encourage younger members to enter into leadership roles. With the mothership portraying a negative attitude, it creates a challenge to attract youngest members onto the board level. This council should be promoting that such a jewel in the southeast edge of the county exists and is open to general public. I feel with the council being positive and obviously reported by the media, this tone will be a catalyst which will make potential candidates for leadership roles seriously considered. Second, the $8,000 grant for 2023 be approved. The continuance of the $8,000 grant on a long-term basis. The Alberta government initiated this type grant to municipalities for 25 years. These grants were much higher dollars, as Virginia said, much appreciated and very thankful. I trust your awareness regarding the park, should the park fold due to the financial situation. So I'm going to go back and read the part of the contract that states, should a default occur, county immediately terminates the agreement and society transfers all of its rights to county at society's expense. Should the registered corporation in the event of winding up, then all rights, titles, interests, and operating costs in the park are transferred to the county. The county then will have to decide what to do from there on. My brief outline is done. You've had a lot of information to read, and I hope you've read it. And now we welcome the questions from all you councillors.
Thank you to the delegation for your presentation. Your verbal presentation definitely supports a good part of the written narrative here. I have been at Moscow Hall. I played in your whist tournaments in Moscow Hall. So I am aware of the place and I am aware of what the services that Moscow provides there. I think part of the history of Moscow Hall is the fact that the late John S. Patuk was one of the founders of it. And I think it was possibly foresight on his part to develop a park in the area such as this. I guess the couple things that I'm going to say here is I have a couple questions. Do you know when and why the provincial funding for this park ceased? Because initially they had agreed to give $20,000 a year. And from the narrative, I believe this occurred until probably the late 1990s, if I'm correct from reading the materials. And the second thing I want to make is just a statement here is, as a council, we've been forced to look at a lot of cutbacks in regards to funding models and services that we provide. And a lot of the reason for that is due to the fact that we've had provincial funding cutbacks in regards to our MSI. The government, even though they had a major surplus this year, they're not committing to make us whole in that regard. We've been inundated with non-payment of oil and gas taxes to the tune of probably $3 to $4 million, which has directly on the bottom line of the county, so we could have an extra $3 or $4 million in our coffers if oil and gas companies would step up to the plate here. The province decided to create a funding model where we now have to fund the RCMP to the tune of probably, I believe the last requisition. This isn't going to be an accurate number. We can get an accurate number, but it's $260,000 to $290,000. And of course, there is inflation. So you know that in the past year, everything has gone up. Fuel's gone up, groceries have gone up, just the general standard of living and cost have gone up. So having to take all that into consideration, council decided that there's certain areas that you have to cut back. So there's two areas we cut back. We cut back on the grants, and we also ended up charging more for some of the services that we provide to the residents. So in order to accommodate that, what we did is we changed our application process for applying for grants, where before, I think it was, if you received a grant previously, you received a $2,000. What we've done now is we've changed our procedure where you make an application, provide your financial statements, state the amount of the grant that you want, and then we proceed from there. Now, if this information wasn't communicated to you fully at the time when you're dealing with administration, probably it could have been done better. However, that is the process that we are now. So I don't think it's targeting the Drahomana society at all. It's just that Lamont County is looking at a way to balance the budget, and you still do have the opportunity as a society to make an application to the county for a grant for the next operating year. I'm not too sure where the 2022 grant stands, but it's something that council is going to be looking at going forward here.
Well, the 22 grants, there's a formal letter from county. It was declined. So that's what really initiated the discussion for having no money and no reason why. I could see, and I've had a lot of experience where council and boards did a sliding, a sliding equation on grants, but to go to zero without an explanation, I think it's poor business.
Okay. So were you advised when the grant was declined of the new process that was in place?
No,
No.
really,
No.
Okay. Okay, so before I turn it over to the balance of council here, do you know when the provincial government stopped funding the park?
Well, stopped funding, they signed it on November in '85. And it was, and then it's supposed to continue for 25 years. And I hate to take time to get into little details, but somewhere along the line with the letter from the county manager at that time, I can't remember who, couldn't make out who his name was, but Peter Zagresh was the reeve, and I think it was about in his era that the funding was revised.
And do you know how it came to being where Lamont County decided to fund $8,000 in?
Well, from the script that I read is, and this
The provincial government turned it over to the county.
well, I know it turned it over, but the county could have turned it down right there and then. But I think the attitude of the county then and the importance of having a presence of such facility, the council of the day decided that let's continue with an $8,000 grant. And as far as I can tell, at that time, Peter Badinsky was the treasurer, and that was acceptable. And it continued that way until 2016, 2018, because we have formal letters. 19 and 20 and 21, there were no formal letters that said anything. Somehow the cash got into the bank. 2021, the cash got into the bank by Danny, Mr. Warawa, delivering a check to Jim Zook. So that's where
That was the last one.
last one.
Okay, we got about 10 minutes left here, so I'll turn it over to council if you have any questions or concerns. Councillor Anaka?
Just to add on to what Reeve Duke said about challenges with budget, and another area where we cut back was we used to provide medically fragile driveway cleaning to ratepayers free of charge. And I don't remember the number, if it was 60 or 80 individuals. So this year, we charged every one of those, instead of having it a free service, everybody paid $100. We had seniors driveway cleaning for $100 before. We raised that to $200. So that's another area. A question I have, so when you rent out the park for ball tournaments or something like that, is there a fee that they're charged? Is there any revenue from that?
Everything every usage in a park has a fee. And our treasurer isn't here today, but maybe Virginia or Jim can respond. But you've got financial statements that indicate well, during COVID, we all know how bad it was with attendance and parties and events. But fees, nobody gets anything free.
Because I was just noting in the financials there, it said for 2022 and 2021, there was zero revenue from ball tournaments. And I get that for 21, but there was nothing,
Well,
the grounds weren't
died.
used at all in 22? Okay. Okay,
In
thanks.
your, Mr. Nanaka, thinking, you talked about the $100 going up to $200, ta-ra. But should this board not be able to maintain the operation of this, that cost to you will have to be budgeted down the line to operate it.
Councillor Wawa? Are you done, Councillor Anaka?
Yeah, I'm done, thanks.
Maybe just move the mic over for, right? Move the mic over.
Just in addition to your comments there, there's upkeep off the park. There's all the bleachers that have to be redone. There's the kitchen part that has to be redone. Nothing has been done there for what, maybe 10 years? Eh? Just the odds and ends, just to keep it a strive.
You know, that's preventative maintenance.
Yes, and then 2 years, and then for 2 years that COVID struck, well, there was nothing there. Nobody came around, eh? But there was still the wear and tear from the weather or whatever, eh? So no, I see your point for this. Eric?
Hello, sir. I do see importance in having these recreation facilities in our county. We do for tourism and for community involvement. I just have a couple questions because I've read through a bunch of your literature and your paperwork in the past agreement. So the county provides you with $2,000 initially, same as all the rest of the ag societies and facilities in the area.
No,
And that $2,000 has nothing to do with the park.
That's the hall.
it's for the hall.
Because it's named as the same, they're two same names.
Different entities. One is the Bahama Recreation Area and one is the Moscow Hall.
They're separate entities and they're financially precisely monitored and the statements are made And yearly, annually, the financial statements are all audited. So what's the revenue for the park
Okay.
and expenses, and revenue for the hall and expenses?
Okay, I'm just clarifying, that's all I needed to do. And then, so the 8,000 is just for the maintenance of the ball diamonds in the park and the outhouses and everything that's involved. Okay, the only, like, and I bring
Well,
same point.
It's not
forward.
just, when you have a function there, you got people, you got a septic tank, you got a pumping, you got to hire somebody to dispose this. So it's an ongoing thing. Now, recently after the COVID, I think the vacationing kind of got changed. There are groups of couples, not groups, couples that drive out from Edmonton and they want to just spend a weekend alone and not be with other people. And there's stuff that has to be done there too, like cleaning up the trees, the branches where the vans can park in. It's a beautiful place.
Oh, it is, definitely. I've played ball there and I've been there too.
Oh,
I
great.
just clarifying so that we know what we're going with the right information, because we get asked as like from the whole community for all event areas. And so the hall has a 2,000, and then this is an additional 8,000 for a ball diamonds and everything else, but we haven't had any requests from anybody else. And if we did, is it fair for us to be able to say, you guys have the 8,000, but we don't have any more as a grant because we're covering it, even knowing, like he says, we have to balance our budget because we don't have the extra income like we had before. And just with inflation, just for everybody's peace of mind, 2 years ago, we paid $558,000 for a grader. This year, we're paying $677,000.
Well,
So that's the amount of inflation that we have.
Yes,
And we have to make sure that we take care of everybody else's facilities too, not just one.
I'm with you. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But I'd like you to focus, not just the ball diamond,
That's right.
but there's so many other activities. There's a high school in Edmonton that for the past 4 or 5 years comes up with their grad. They like the place, it's secured, and there's no interference from some other people. The only problem is I can't keep my windows open when I'm going to sleep.
Thank you.
But John, I can add also, the implement dealers that use the park for, and they rent the park. Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, for their summer shows or whatever, demonstrations, eh?
Right.
There's Vegerville Composite that use,
Well, RME have done that.
yes, yeah, we, what you call it, the park, I think we use the park, or we use the hall probably. But there's your, well, they said your grads that have the parties in there also, that have their grad party after 11 in there. And it's a place for them to go, to leave the towns, so there is no problems with the towns. They're bussed in there, eh?
Well, some families like to do the big stuff, have a big dinner for their graduate grade 12 students.
Right.
And then once that's done, they cross the road and have their party at that ground.
Yeah.
That happens with many high
Yeah.
schools.
I don't think we're questioning the activities here and stuff. I think we only got a couple minutes left here, so Councillor Whitis, do you have any comments?
What does it cost to rent it for a 3-day ball tournament, like for over a weekend? What did it cost to rent the park?
$450 to rent the park, and it's an extra $75 to rent the kitchen, the concession.
Okay, how many people have a key to? It's locked up, which it has to be now with violence and stuff. But how many people have a key to?
2 people.
2 people.
Actually, the treasurer, myself, and the vice president.
Okay, do you guys ever consider maybe making campsites? There's a big waiting list on campsites. If you don't call into the Alberta government the first day, they're booked for the year.
We are in Alberta. We are in Alberta. So this-
Do you guys rent out campsites and stuff, or?
Well, it's on it's in a Google system that it's available. There's a number of potential campers stopped in my place to get in there. So it's there. In the early days, there was a full-time custodian for the park that kept the gates open, and however, that was quite an expense. So you had a balance.
Anything else, Neil? No. Okay, our time unfortunately is up here. I'll make a closing comment here, and then I'll allow the delegation to make a quick summation if they so choose here. Appreciate you coming out and appearing in front of council as a delegation today. We will take this under advisement, and council will debate it further, not at today's meeting, but probably at a future meeting. The one thing that I would suggest to the society is there's a community facility enhancement program grant, and in the last provincial budget here, the province increased the amount of that grant, and what that grant does is it allows you to get money to improve your facilities. And in this case, you got two facilities. You got the hall and you got the recreation area. Normally, these grants are a matching grant, where if you get a grant for $20,000, you got to match it for $20,000. That matching can be either in cash or in kind. So if the society members do the labor themselves, that can be used to offset the, so if you got to fix your seating.
Kind, that means sweat equity, correct?
Sweat equity, yes. So if you got bleachers that need to be fixed, or fences that need to be repaired, or you got anything in your hall that needs to be repaired or whatever, if you need a new septic tank, I'm sure that it all qualifies under that program, but your secretary or treasurer can go online and just see what the facilities or what's available within that grant there. So just a suggestion for the society here.
Again, on behalf of our board, we thank you very much for allowing us to make our presentation. As I stated earlier, correspondence should be and must be directed to Jim Zook, the president, our tall and highly motivated president. Have a great creative day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip home.
Okay, and as I advised, council will take the delegation's presentation under advisement, and I think the best way to deal with this going forward is to bring it up on as a future agenda item and make a decision at that point, where we'll give administration direction. In the interim, what I would appreciate is a motion to accept the delegation as information.
I can do that.
Yep.
Lamont County Council accept their New Moscow Hall Liberty Society delegation as information.
Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's carried 5-0. We'll move on to item 5.1 of the agenda. 2023 Alberta Forestry Mutual Aid Fire Control Agreement.
And Mr. Reid, before we proceed, I'm accountable for health and safety in the building. I just wanted to ensure everybody in the gallery here, as well as in the foyer room, is aware that if we do have, say, a fire alarm or an incident of any sort, we will ask you to leave through the front door, and we have a muster area across the staff parking lot, should it be necessary. That's why we've taken your names on your way in, so that we can account for everybody, should we have that sort of an incident. So once again, out the front door and across the staff parking lot. And once we've confirmed that everybody is safe, well, then we can either disperse or make our way back when it's safe. Mr. Reeve, with regards to this next item.
Maybe if I can just add another housekeeping rule, there is a washroom just outside this door and to your left. So
good thinking. Mr. Reeve, this item number 5.1 is a mutual aid agreement with Alberta Agricultural and Forestry. I will ask that you make a correction in your agenda package. The motion should say for a period of 3 years, March 1, 2023 to 2025. 2026, of course, that's 3. I'm not so good at math in public. Regional Chief Milliken is here to provide an overview. This is an extension of existing agreements.
Okay. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship of Council. It's my pleasure to bring forward for your consideration a mutual aid agreement for the purpose of fire control assistance within Lamont County and within forest protection area. This is not a new agreement. We have an existing agreement with Alberta Forestry already. I'll just provide a little bit of the background on this. The mutual aid fire control agreement and fire 2 separate documents covered under the agreement. And they're critical documents for us for major law. It provides a framework. Provides a framework to access additional resources such as helicopters, ground. And the fire control plan outlines the responsibilities and division. I've activated the plan several times in our history. The last one was in Council may recall the ground crew that came in after they finished. And it led to a very timely conclusion.
Shane? Closer. They can't hear you in the foyer room.
Actually, or maybe we can give them a portable mic. I think that one works better.
Sure.
Sorry,
Yeah, no
I'll
problem.
turn this one off. There you go.
Is this a bit better?
Yeah.
Perfect. So as with most mutual aid agreements, there's no guarantee of a response from either party, so we can be requested to provide assistance to Alberta Forestry. That is not common in our area because we do not have a large forest protection area. It's more so the other way. So if we're requesting ground support from Alberta Forestry during peak wildfire season, it may not come. We may have to look at other avenues, just like any mutual aid agreement. This agreement would be in effect all year and continuously from March 1st, 2023 to 2026 at the end of March. And the plan is updated annually, and the agreement authorizes the regional fire chief and the Alberta Forestry representative to update that plan as needed throughout the year. So contact information, when we have a new schedule, fees and charges, we can insert that and so forth. So that prevents us from having to come back and do this every single year. There's no direct financial impact by signing the agreement or endorsing the plan. If we do use resources from Alberta Forestry, of course, there's a cost to the county. And if Alberta Forestry requests resources from us, then we charge according to our scheduled fees and charges. The last agreement was signed in 2021 and expires at the end of this month in 2023.
Council, have any questions for Shane regarding the mutual aid fire control agreement?
I kind of went through it.
Shane, to your knowledge, are there any changes in this agreement from the previous one that we had signed?
No, there's actually a small change. They've more heavily referenced road builders rates on their end for certain apparatus. And there's some small rate changes just with inflation on their end for ground crews, but no changes to the actual substance or resources available to the county.
Okay, so my question is, if we do have a wildfire, and using the Scarrow wildfire as an example here, and we need provincial assistance, do we get charged for their equipment?
We do, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like any other mutual aid agreement that we have in place, we would be charged for any resources we access, but we get the volume and type of resources that we need to mitigate the incident, stop the incident from progressing, and hopefully save money in the back end.
And then we would still have the opportunity to attempt to recover funds from the disaster recovery program, right?
Our fire costs exceed $20 per
Any other questions for Shane? If not, we can put the motion on the table.
Mr. Reeve, it's on the board.
Councillor Naka,
Okay, I move that Lamont County Council approve the mutual aid agreement with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry for the purpose of fire control assistance in Lamont County for a period of 3 years, March 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2026, as presented.
council have any questions or concerns regarding the motion? Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried 5-0. With council's permission, I would like to just take a step back here and go back to the delegation, just so that we don't miss something on the order paper here. I think it'd probably be appropriate for us to make a motion directing administration to bring back the Drahamanov Society back to council for further discussion. I guess put it on a future meeting agenda. Otherwise, we're going to lose it on the order paper here.
Mr. Reeve will bring that to a committee of the whole.
So, seeing as though we're a little out of order here, can we maybe have administration formulate the motion? We'll deal with the next item and come back to this one. Okay. Okay, so while they're preparing that motion, let's move on to item 5.2, policy 7001.23, disposal of surplus assets and goods.
So, Mr. Reeve, as you can see, this is an item that came out of the February 14th meeting. Council directed some adjustments. Ms. McCann is here to point them out.
Good morning, Reeve and Council. So at the February 28th, 2023 regular meeting of Council, Committee of the Whole directed administration to bring back policy 7001.22, disposal of assets, to the next regular council meeting. So I brought it back. Administration has updated the approval dates, policy number, and has added the following. Proceeds from sale of vehicles and construction equipment will go to the equipment reserve. And you'll find that underneath the procedure. It's the last bullet on the procedure on page 78.
Mr. Reeve, the other change that was directed by council coming out of the committee of the whole was the first bullet under the CAO's responsibilities. Provide council of listing of all surplus vehicles and construction equipment prior to the items being disposed of for council's approval. So that has not changed. That's just reinforcing what the other prior decisions were.
I think council had the most concern with that bullet. Any questions regarding the policy? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the policy. Councillor Warwa.
Move that Lamont County Council approve policy 7001-23, disposal of surplus assets and goods.
Council have any questions or concerns regarding the motion? Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Oh, yeah.
It's carried 5-0.
Thank you.
How are we doing on that last motion, or we carry on, Peter?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Direct staff to bring back. Direct staff to bring back.
Need a picture of council.
I'm just reading the motion.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to get too close.
I'm happy about that. Does that meet your needs, Mr. Reeve?
I think it meets my needs. Council okay with that motion? Want to put that motion on the table? Dan?
Yeah, the Lamont County Council directs administration to bring back M, the Harmonia, Moscow Hall, Literary Society, delegation to the future committee of the whole meeting.
Actually, can I suggest a friendly amendment to that? We don't want to bring the delegation back. I think we want to bring
Matter.
Yeah, yeah.
the grant request to a future. Right?
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yes, yeah, just delete.
Grant request to a future committee of the whole meeting.
Yes.
Okay. You're okay with that friendly amendment?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to reread the motion or we're
Okay,
good?
that Lamont County Council directs administration to bring back the Moscow Hall.
Drahomanov. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Okay, Moscow Hall Literary Society grant request to a future committee of the whole meeting. Thanks, Peter.
Anytime.
Questions or concerns? Seeing none, any debate on the motion? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you, council, for allowing a little disruption in the agenda here. Okay, we will move on to item 5.3, the 2023 road graveling program.
So, Mr. Reeve, we're using the winter months as an opportunity to plan for the major programs in the summer. The next two items are dealing with road graveling and the drainage program. Road graveling is the single most significant program that we undertake, both in terms of dedication of staffing as well as expenditure budget. Having garnered some significant learnings from 2023, Mr. Dietz and his staff are bringing forward a presentation of the planned works for 2023. And the most significant change here is that we are now looking at a 6-year rotation for graveling our roads, which was council's direction during budgeting. So Mr. Dietz, please.
So as council directed, we've put together a road graveling plan going on a 6-year rotation, which pulls us from 238 miles per year down to 199. I had our operations manager work with our grader operators to identify roads in each area that they feel needs to be addressed this year. From that, we have a map shown on Schedule A showing 220 proposed miles. Of this, 38 of the proposed miles have been graveled in the last 3 years. So on the map, all those roads in red have been graveled in 3 years. Roads in green, last graveled in 2020, light blue in 21, and dark blue in 22. Sorry about that. So the map shows the 220 miles our grader operators have identified. Once the snow melts and the roads dry up, we'll be reassessing to try and reduce that 220 down to 199. What we want to do today is show council what our planned roads are, if there's any roads that we need to take another look at, anything that may be missing, anything you feel shouldn't be on the list. As well, as we did last year, most of these roads will see an application rate of 285 tones per mile, while some of the narrow roads will have a reduced application rate of 225 miles, and there may be the odd road that may exceed 285 depending on the width of the road.
We're good. Okay. Council, have any questions for Darby? Councillor Wick?
I do have one request. I see on your map here for 2023, moving on, don't get me wrong, I'm colorblind as you'll never get it, but on here, if you could highlight 194, Range Road 194, south of 552 to 550, the Lamco Road. We need to redo that one. That one is brutal. Lots of requests coming for that one.
Yeah, it's got to be ripped up and put back.
I think there's only oil on that.
There is oil.
Yeah, it's got to be ripped up and put back to gravel. I went down it 4 times yesterday. It's a disaster.
Just so council's aware, as we're doing with our graveling program, as we're doing with our drainage program today, in a future meeting here, we'll also be bringing our dust abatement program for council's review. And we'll make sure that we identify all the roads we've discussed about doing a rip and repack on, as well as the roads we'll be re-oiling, and the annual roads will be applying calcium. And we've also got a trial of MG30 to do this year as well.
Are we pretty close on mileage for all 5 divisions here? Pretty close on equal mileage? Or
it's fairly close. We can do a summary. Obviously, we have to remove 221 miles from this map, but we won't be able to do that until the snow melts and we can better assess the roads.
So what ended up happening is we requested the grader operators to provide, I believe it was 26 or 27 miles per grader area, and then I took that and put it on a map. However, there were some roads that were identified that they wanted to go above and beyond their 26 miles. So they felt that, say for example, Councillor Naka's area, you can see Township Road 580, it's been graveled in the last couple of years. However, the operator in that area does feel that it does need more. So he did want to add that to the list, and that's one of the roads we're going to be reassessing come spring.
Okay, that brings me to my question, Corey, and if anyone speaking, if you can get the mic as close to you as possible, it's beneficial for the people in the fishbowl here. Is we've gone to a 6-year rotation on graveling here, and according to my calculations, we have roughly 23 miles that were essentially graveled in 2021 or 2022. So obviously we're not making our 3-year or 6-year rotation on those roads. One of those roads is Township Road 580 from 855 all the way to Vinca Bridge. What is the reason that 2 years later we need to re-gravel that road? Is it lack of adequate gravel put on when we graveled it the last time, or?
I would consider that road high traffic. Higher traffic roads tend to be require graveling more often. If council's direction is to only gravel a road once every 6 years, then that's the program we can implement. What we've asked our grader operators to identify the worst of the worst and try and address those.
Okay. Yeah, I can appreciate that. The only thing is, like, something went haywire here, right? Like, we either didn't put enough gravel on, or else I agree with you, that's a high traffic road, especially for trucks hauling grain. There's a lot of grain that comes out of that corner. So you could be right, Darby, that we need to consider graveling a road every 3 or 4 years. But then there's a reverse situation where there may be a road that you don't have to gravel every 8 or 9 years. So,
and with the year we had last year was very dry. We gravelled the road. It saw really no moisture until the snow fell. So those roads that were gravelled in 2022 really need to be assessed in spring before we can say yes, it needs to be gravelled, or no, it doesn't, because we really don't know what it's going to do. We spent all of August and all the fall dealing with washboard.
And just before I turn it over to Councilor Naka, I am assuming that Corey will be doing a personal road inspection to ensure that the grader operators are asking that the right roads be
just as we did last year. We will be driving every one of these roads prior to ensuring that it is on the list, so that we are making sure that we're graveling the right roads at the right time.
Okay, Councilor Naka.
Okay, my question is, there's nothing shown on 162, the Hall Road, or 584 that comes out of that pit. This is a county graveling map, but is the contractor, that's people that have road use agreements there, is there going to be any graveling done on that Hall Road out of there?
Any graveling that's required on a road under a road use agreement is dealt with at the time there's an issue. So if we get a wet spring and they haul on, they wreck the road, they have to gravel at that time. We had a couple of instances last year where we had the licensee gravel the road, depending on the time of the year and their activities. So this is separate from the RUAs. This is what we do. In speaking to 162, we did gravel it at the end of our graveling program last year, because we did end up having to, we pulled all the gravel off to try and reduce the washboard, reduce the dust, because it was so dry. And we put the gravel back, and then we end up re-graveling it at the end of the program.
So we re-graveled the whole stretch, or just as required? As required. Okay, and any contribution from the contractor in the area?
In that instance, there wasn't, but seeing as how we have re-graveled it, if there is issues this year, then we will be looking at the RUA holders on that road.
Okay, thank you.
We have one more year contract with the same provider?
Our gravel supply contract is up this year, so we'll be putting out a new tender here this spring for a multi-year supply contract.
So the guy we had, his contract's over, or he's got one more year?
This is his final year, so his contract ends in 23.
Did he tell you which pit the gravel's coming out of?
The gravel will be coming out of the same pit for now.
Any other questions regarding the proposed road graveling program? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to recommended motion here. I guess that we accept the road graveling program as information. We'll let Irina get that on the board. Councillor Wood, are you prepared to make that motion?
I make a motion that Lamont County Council accept the 2023 graveling program update as information.
Council, have any questions, concerns? Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's carried 5-0. All right. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, 5.4, the drainage program.
So once again, Mr. Reeve, planning in the off season for the major seasonal work. The information in your package includes ditching for 23 as well as culvert replacements, both internal and external. And it does, just as a matter of interest, show Lafarge, and it does show Beaver Hill. So Mr. Commissioner Nick is here along with Mr. Dietz to present this material.
So as we continue to upgrade the county's drainage infrastructure in conjunction with the master drainage plan that was completed for the county, we've put together a semi-plan for 2023 shown on attachment A and as well on the map in front of you. We've identified major ditching projects that we want to accomplish this year. We've got in green internal culvert replacements. We've got in orange capital culvert replacements, so those are the ones that we'll be contracting out. We've also got in light blue additional projects that, depending on timing and funding, we'd like to get those done as well. So depending on where our contracted work comes in price-wise, we may be able to get more work done. And then in dark blue, that's the Beaver Hill drainage that we've included in the budget for this year to have that construction project completed. So just as we did with the gravel program, we're here today to ask council, is there any areas of attention that aren't identified and areas that we need to investigate once the snow melts? Any that you feel shouldn't be on the map?
Council, you have any thoughts or questions? I guess the only, or I'll start off here, in regards to the Beaver Hill drainage, has the engineering study been done for that area, or do we need an engineering study for that area?
Engineering work has been completed for the Beaver Hill area drainage. No studies required. It's at this point I move forward with the construction.
Okay. And I guess the other aspect, to what degree do we expect to hire contract workers? Because we know that the contract we signed last year did not work out so well. So I guess we would leave it up to administration, but council would like to be aware as to what.
So for 2023, we've set aside money in the budget to contract out the Beaver Hill drainage. We've set aside $500,000 for contracted drainage as well. We've taken a change from what was done in 22, where we're doing the designs in-house, and then we'll be contracting out multiple programs. So we may put out a contract for 2 or 3 in one area. We may put out for 5 in a 2-mile stretch to try and get the best bang for our buck. We don't want to tender out the entire contracted program and then be paying for multiple moves, mobilizations, demobilizations to get the best bang for our buck. If we have an issue with a contractor, then we can find somebody else very quickly. Like you said, we had issues with the design build contract last year. We're trying to get away from that.
Okay.
How much we got set aside for the Beaver Hill drainage?
It's approximately 300 and change.
And that'll do the construction?
Yes.
Okay, on 562 between 204 and 205, that deep ditch there where that Ruderheim Creek goes for about a quarter mile, we doing anything over there?
Sir.
Yes, we have that marked in the map as a ditching project. We are going to be armoring the bank there as brought up during the council bus tour we did last year.
What are we doing there?
Rip wrapping the bank and armoring it and cleaning it out so that it will not have any erosion issues and will flow freely. Sorry.
And once that's complete, the plan was to install guardrail along there as well.
Okay, I got 4 smaller culverts we got to add on here too. I'll give you the locations and we'll have to discuss them. They're problem culverts, need replacing.
Yeah, I think the map is just kind of a pretext to what we're planning on doing. So I think if councillors have additions or they feel that it's not, I guess my main concern is I think I got 3 or 4 carryovers on my service requests. So I would really hope that those have made the list here. So, yes.
All the green items are carryovers from last year's service requests.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? No. If not, I will entertain a motion to accept his information.
That Lamont County Council accept the 223 drainage program update as information.
Questions or concerns? Debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried 5-0. Okay, so I think what we will do now is I think I will call a 10-minute recess here. All right. Missing a couple councillors, but I got quorum here, so we'll reconvene the meeting at 10:28. And just for the people in the gallery, if you need a water, there's water on the table here. And let's move on to item 5.5, the employment policy.
So, Mr. Reeve, these policies contributed about 110 pages to the agenda. You'll see in the legislative history that for the most part you have seen most of these before. The new aspect of this agenda is on page 93, where we're showing the disposition of the items in the current policy 4162 into the various new policies, which is something council requested. The truly only new policy that you have in front of you today is the one dealing with bereavement leave, and that one is on page 128. So what you'll hear from Mr. Boyko is any kind of tweaks that we've made to definitions to ensure consistency, and then our first take at what you are looking for in terms of a bereavement policy. Now that one may be close, or there may be adjustments required there. Our sincere hope is that you can approve the policies that are ready, either amend and approve the bereavement policy, or provide us some solid direction on how we can bring that one back for approval at a subsequent meeting. Go ahead, Rodney.
Thank you, Mr. Tarnowski. So yes, as Mr. Tarnowski's mentioned, we've seen this a number of times at Committee of the Whole. There was some slight additions made to the personal leave policy as well. Section 3D was added to ensure clarity. This came directly from the former policy, and you'd be able to see that on page 32 of 68. Council had clarified at the last Committee of the Whole meeting about the EV parking and charging, so that was added to policy 4162C, as in section 6.1. And the tracking sheet that was requested, as Mr. Tarnowski stated, is on page 93. So this is essentially in the same policies coming forward that we've discussed at Committee of the Whole. I can walk through any of the areas that council wishes, or entertain questions at this point.
Council, have any questions for Mr. Boyko?
Is there anything with the dress code on this one? Is this where we're taking it out?
There is no dress code in this particular section, so that's section 10. The wording that was there before. Sorry, let me just find that page again. is on page 146 of 662. And so being that this is more administrative in nature, this was removed from the governance policies. However, if there's something governance related, or if there's the council wants to have this brought back in, we would entertain that direction.
I guess if I can just follow up on Councillor Zoitis' question here. I think as council, we kind of want to deliver the appropriate image to the public out there. And I think that I appreciate we have kind of the administration building, which requires a certain dress code, and then we have the public works people out there that require a different dress code. You can't expect a mechanic to be wearing a business suit, so to speak. So I think that what I would like to see, if council is in agreement here, I think that I would like to see a policy that's separate from all the other ones in regards to development of a dress code which portrays a positive image on behalf of Lamont County here. And I guess what I would be trying to avoid here is ladies showing up in tank tops or sundresses, or people in ripped jeans or whatever. And is blue jeans an appropriate manner of dress in the administration building 5 days a week, I guess? That's kind of where I would kind of like to go with the dress code here. I think if we just kind of leave it open to administration, it doesn't give administration the true latitude. And this way with the policy, you can say, well, council's policy states versus you making the judgment as a supervisor, what you feel is appropriate for your department and what's not appropriate for your department.
So, Mr. Reeve, I'll encourage councillors to come up with an appropriate motion that directs us to bring forward dress code in a specific policy. My sincere hope is that we can address those that are here that have already received your direction, and then to the extent necessary, discuss the bereavement policy. So we're happy to take whatever direction you provide.
So does council want to have a dress code policy or not?
I'll make that motion. We look into getting something here.
So your motion would be that Lamont County Direct Administration to develop a dress code policy.
Yeah.
We've got some suggested wording up there, Mr. Reeve. Does that suit your needs?
Well, I'm not too sure that it's
desired by council, desired by ratepayers more than anything. It's for the ratepayers, so they're representing the ratepayers. So
yeah, I think if we go dealing with a dress code that ensures Lamont County staff portray a positive image. To the public.
Desired by the public more than council.
Remove the desired by council.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Reeve, we take direction from council, and it's yours to interpret for us what that is.
Yeah.
So I don't want somebody coming in and saying you're dressed wrong. It's council's direction to advise what you expect, and we'll follow that.
I'll make that motion. Lamont County Council direct administration to bring forward a policy dealing with dress code that ensures the staff project the image desired by council.
Questions or concerns with that motion? Debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried 5-0. Okay, and I guess the best way to deal with the remaining policies is to go through them one by one. We've all had the opportunity for the last 5 days to read the policies. So we will start with policy 4162B, period 23. And it deals with human relations, employee code of conduct. Any changes council wants to see to the policy? If not, we can move on to the next one because we'll approve them all at once. Recruitment and promotion, policy 4162, bracket C, .23.
It's on page 99.
Rodney, just for clarification, a lot of these policies were derived from the policy, employment policy 4162, right?
That is correct. Most of these were just pulled across from there, making sure that the intent was there. Updates were created for new legislation that's been brought in, or if there was changes to the employment standards code, which there has been a few over the last few years. It's gone back and forth with the changes in government. So those are updated to the current standards, employment standards code.
Councillor Wick?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yep.
Move on to the next policy, 4162D, .23, hours of work.
Did we change anything in this policy from the last?
No, we did not. So just one of the clarifications, sorry, I'm just going to take you back to page 102. That is where we brought in the electric vehicle parking statement that council had desired. So that's section 6A.
That was on page 102 if you're looking.
There was a little clarification to Deputy Voidis's question. The section on page 107, so that's section 3 callback. A little bit more clarity was put in there. There was a little bit of confusion between the pay for on-call duty and if they were paid both, and that's in section D. So sorry, page 107, 3D, clarification that if a member of Public Works or employee of Public Works is on call, they would get the $65 or minimum of 3 hours of pay, whichever is greater.
Okay, I'm going back to the hours of work in regards to overtime. When you're referring to road maintenance employees, do we have a definition for road maintenance employees? Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. That would be on page 104.
Council's okay with a definition of a road maintenance employee? Because does that include the patching crew and stuff then?
That would, yeah, any crew that's involved in road construction on road maintenance would be part of the patching crew. So.
Okay, and then the 44 hours is always a conundrum to interpret, or is it just me?
No.
It's based on labor standards, and yes, it is a conundrum. We have set the system up with a rule now that it looks at the period of work. It's not the individual day. So while our crews are expected to work 40 hours a week on normal hours, overtime is paid after 44. So that's the maximum on labor standards. We council can't go any further past that maximum, but they can be more generous. And so we could, if council desired, we could set that overtime is paid at 40 hours or whatever number council desires. It just can't be the other way. So labor standards are set up to protect the employee from a unreasonable employer. And so that's why we're not allowed to go further than that.
Important to note that our standard was our obligation to the employee is 40 hours a week, and that.
Anything over, we paid.
Right.
Yes.
So if they work 43 hours that week, they don't get overtime.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding hours of work? If not, we'll move on to the vacation policy, 4162, brackets E, .23.
So the only a change from this policy, from the old policy, is 1A4, and that's the 6 weeks or 30 days per year for 25 plus years of service. It's following in the same route of 5, 10, 15 years. And then there was a change here that previously it was 0 to 4 years of service, then 5 to 15, and 16 to 24. We believe that was probably more of a clerical error, that for 5 years each section. So
any questions on vacation? (4162F) .23, personal leave.
So there was an addition in here. So that is on page 113, 3D. This particular section in the previous policy was put under special leaves. So it is just, but it had referenced personal leave. So we felt it was more appropriate that it be part of the personal leave policy, since it is specifically saying that your personal leave would be utilized. So that's why this section 3D was added from the ones that you have seen before in committee of the whole.
Can we define a personal leave day? I don't think it's defined in the policy.
And can we also define like amount of allotted time? Like if we want to take off, if an employee needs 2 hours at the end of the day or whatever, does that come out? Like, do we get to do it by hourly, or we just, if you're not there, I mean, if you're not there?
In fact, we don't use the terminology personal leave day. We prefer for employees to use the time they require. The risk, of course, is that somebody may run out of personal leave at the end of the year, and then they're wondering, what do we do? So if a person has a dental appointment, it's much preferred for them to take 2 or 3 hours. If the dental appointment takes 2 or 3 hours and they want to be away for the balance of their day, we suggest that they consider vacation.
The other area I have a concern is the number of personal leave days. In the previous policy for vacation, we're allowing 15 days for 0 to 4 years of service, which is okay. And then we add an extra 1 1/4 days of personal leave, and that would be with pay, right?
That's correct. Yeah. The personal leave that we have in our current policy and this is to replace normally what was called sick leave in the past. We do have the statement did allow for financial appointments or legal or financial appointments as well. So the correlation between that in the past was this was sick leave. And part of our EI, we have a reduced EI rate that the employer pays because of these policies. So one of the things we'd have to look at is, you know, if we're reducing it, then that may affect that. If we're increasing it, then obviously that won't affect that, but we'd have to look at the administration better on that. So
Okay, my apologies in that regard, because I was not aware that personal leave was actually sick days.
yes, and so that's kind of the, like with the policy statement, that's where we use that to cover off those sick days essentially.
Absences due to illness, quarantine, medical, legal, or financial appointments, compassionate leave, or accidents for which compensation is not payable under WCB.
Okay. And that's the industry norm, is usually 1 1/4 for sick days, right?
That's
kind of.
Yeah, the industry norm. It's seems to be varying all over the place lately. There's some that have unlimited leave, and which seems unreasonable on the other side of the scope. So this is a...
Yeah, Mr. Reeve, if I can, you might recall from our triannual reporting at the end of January, we showed that the average usage of personal leave in 2022 was 8 days. Up a day from 2021, that may be directly attributable to COVID, not sure, but we did have more absence in 22 than 2021 related to COVID. A really good number in this industry is 6. So we are not way out of whack. One of the conversations I've had with the senior admin team, obviously, is things that get measured gets managed. So we are very focused on trying to improve on that 8 in 2023.
Is council okay with the name personal leave, or do we want to stick sick days in here somehow, somewhere? I don't know.
You'll find one way or the other.
You're okay with personal leave?
I guess as long as the employees are aware of what it is.
Yeah, personal leave is on a request basis and on an approved basis. So if they aren't aware coming in, then they're aware on the way out. On the way out of their request.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And just to answer one of the earlier questions about hours, I don't see that we didn't write in here that that they can take it in hours, but that's been the way we've interpreted the policy so far, is that you don't have to take a day, you can use personal hours. So.
And that's where I kind of only have one concern, is because if a director or somebody has enough work lined up or enough backlog of work lined up, and then somebody takes 2 hours today, 2 hours tomorrow, the next day, you're not there for your full time of employment anyway. I mean, usually, I mean, I hate to be that fella that says it, but if I was sick, I didn't get paid. You stayed home and that was it. There wasn't no, just because I got a doctor's appointment doesn't mean I get to take a couple hours here and then take the rest of the day just to stay in town if I was in there. You take the day or you're not there, because then you can, it's easier for the directors and the foremen to say, well, listen, I don't have this person for this day, so we can make separate or different arrangements to make sure the work still gets completed. I'm not keen on the way it says it's hourly, or we can take, you know, if you have an appointment, take the whole day or figure it out. Like, there's always after hours. There's a lot of things that other people have to do. I think we're getting very accommodating. That's all.
Well, Mr. Reeve, I'd remind that this is, in some respects, a condition of employment that was included when people were made their offer of employment. So making changes to it might require certain agreements. So my preference would be not to tweak unless the change is significant.
Yeah. Oh, and I can appreciate that. I've only been on council for a little bit, and I didn't set this up, so I would never have set this up, is what I'm getting at. So if we're going to tweak it, let's tweak it so it's either in fully or not. And then there's no gray zone for trying to get work done, and then we don't look like we're sitting around and people are sitting around because they don't have enough people to do that certain portion of the jobs.
Well, once again, it is on an approval basis, so if this is somebody on a drainage crew and the drainage work cannot continue without this person on that day, then it will not be approved.
Okay.
And if a person truly is sick, they will be away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now's the time to change it if you want to change it.
Yeah.
So my apologies, Councillor Wick, which particular clause are you referring to here?
Well, you guys have your personal leave. You're gone, the whole policy 4162 F is there. We've just been advised that instead of taking a day, they can take hours off. So, I mean, it's halfway through a day and somebody all of a sudden applies or says, oh, I need to take 2 hours off at the end of the day or 2 hours in the middle of the day, but I'll take 2 hours worth of pay and then just stay in town shopping or whatever, or not come back for the rest of the day. How do you set a job plan forward and create a job process to make sure that it gets finished when, I guess, like he says, we have to approve, that has to be approved. So I think if you know you're needing that some time on a certain, you take the day.
Well, and I'm going to give you the reciprocal side of that. We don't want staff to be saying, okay, I'm going to have a dentist appointment today and I'm going to have a doctor's appointment the next day, so that now, as opposed to if they're forced to take the full day, well, not forced, you're granted the day, it's actually more of a cost to the county, where if we allow or have them take hours, then we can say, you should be here up until this particular time, and then you can go for your appointment, or you can take a half day for that appointment if it's in Edmonton versus being in Lamont. And then we have larger amounts of money that is going to that personal leave side, as opposed to them using up their vacation accruals for that rest of the day. So it's a bit of a balance that we're going to have to achieve on that.
So Councillor Wick, would you be receptive to a minimum of a half a day?
No, I mean, it's up to all of us. If we decide we're going to vote that you'd like to stay with it, we vote for it. You guys vote for, I vote against. That's all.
Okay.
How do you want it amended?
Well, I mean, it's all right. How do you amend it so that it's proper for everybody, right? We still got it's still the county is still a business. It still has to run. But if we got people leaving here and there when they decide they want to do it, I book my appointments so that I got 2 appointments in one day, so I only miss 1 day instead of 2 half days. Or like it's at some point in time, we still have to be accountable for what we have as a job at the county. So
Councillor Wick, my fear would be that we would not have the tool to be able to reduce use of personal leave from 8 to something less than 8 if we move to a place where people are granted a full day. Let's say that it's tax season. Our tax clerk needs to attend an appointment. I know that Mr. Boyko would certainly appreciate if she could work 5 hours of that day or 4 hours of that day rather than being gone for 7. And certainly from the perspective of cost to the county, I would rather that absence cost 2 hours than 7. So that's the rationale.
Okay.
And I think that's the opposing view that Mr. Boyko was trying to suggest.
Right.
So truly, if somebody is sick, then they will be away. If somebody's taking 2 hours today, 2 hours tomorrow, and 2 hours the day after for dentist, doctor, and accountant, I think the person might be gaming the system.
And that's what I was just watching over.
And that's what we're going to try to prevent.
Okay.
Councillor Naka?
And I hate to throw a wrench into this, but how do you keep track of all the time when payroll is done by an outside source?
Yep.
It's just to keep track of all this stuff, it becomes.
Mr. Boyko?
Actually, the reporting has increased significantly with the new system, in the fact that the old system was a batch process system. You couldn't couldn't see items on a daily basis before you had to wait for it to be processed. And whereas the new system is a on just-in-time system, so you can see that we've in fact increased the reporting significantly, which has allowed us to address employees that may have been gaming the system or overusing certain things. So I would say that we're actually, now that we're seeing more reporting with this new system, we should see less abuse of the time. So.
How is this new? How is this more reporting? Where does that come from?
It's coming from the fact that we can actually report back to management of the certain areas what individuals are doing, and allowed us to be able to see, you know, everything from overtime to personal leave to vacation or whatever is being used, and manage it on a weekly basis.
So we have access to the PayWorks portal where we can see all of this.
That's correct.
We didn't have that before when we had in-house.
No.
Obviously.
Everything was very manual before.
We needed a different program then.
So directors have access to this? Or supervisors? Or just...
No, supervisors have employee level access, and Mr. Boyko has system-wide access.
Okay, I think we beat this one to death a little bit, so council can make a decision whether they want to exclude it from the approvals today or not. So let's move on to 4162 brackets G, .23, job protected leaves.
So these leaves are what is laid out in labor standards. This particular policy doesn't necessarily need to be here because it's already in labor standards, but in labor standards it's a little difficult to access. So that's why this policy is here. So some of the leaves may seem excessive, but these are job protected leaves, as the title on page 115 states. And so what this particular is, if somebody takes this leave, we must protect their job and have a similar job for them to come back to. But the compensation is through the EI program, not through our payroll system. And again, we could expand these, but we can't limit them more than what's in here. And from the last ones, we moved bereavement leave to its own separate policy as per the discussion at the last committee of the whole meeting.
All these leaves would be without pay, they just protect a job position, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, let's move on to policy 4162H, .23, drug and alcohol.
And this is updated to be more in line with most of the stuff from the old policies in here. It's been more updated to be in line with the legalization of cannabis and the accommodations that are required around that section of labor standards.
Do we have it here? Do we have? A second, I can't read my writing here. Just give me 1 second. Are we drug testing all of our employees that we hire? Upon hiring them, are we drug testing them for the seasonal, the full-time equipment operators and laborers? Are we still doing that, or are we not in this thing?
So that one, I would go back to the recruitment policy. So that's page 100. So that would be part of a medical fitness test. So when you're hiring somebody, so it's going to be on safety sensitive positions, there is another section. 2A, so page 124, the one we're on, 2A, pre-employment drug and alcohol testing may be required before or after a conditional offer of employment is extended at the discretion of the employer. This is a slight change from the previous policy. The previous policy had stated that we would only do it after the offer is extended. And if the way the wording of the previous policy was that if an offer was extended and a positive test was received, then we would have to provide accommodation. So the wording on here is the county, so this is page 125, the top of that section. If deemed positive with no legitimate medical reason, the county may request the candidate to attend an assessment performed by a certified substance abuse professional to seek help with the cost to be borne by the candidate. So that is a correction or an adjustment from the old policy to the new policy.
Maybe I could just reinforce that in 2A, it says pre-employment drug testing and alcohol testing may be required before or after a conditional offer. So because it's worded that way, if a positive test comes back, we have no obligation.
Last year when we hired somebody, they went for a drug and alcohol test. Are we still doing it is what I'm asking.
That's what I want.
Are we, not the May,
In safety sensitive positions, yes.
I thought we were doing everybody, so that May should be out, and why are we changing that?
I don't think we're changing it. I think this is our current practice, that we do it when we're dealing with a safety.
But I think
Because last year when you hired somebody, they went and got from an RCMP there and a drug and alcohol test.
Yes.
It is done. So now we're not doing it?
It says we may do it in safety sensitive positions. That was a safety sensitive position.
Do you want to, which part are you looking at here, Councilor?
On page 124,
2A.
Drug and alcohol testing.
2A, yeah.
We all, pre-employment, they went and did a drug and alcohol test. Laborers did, everybody did last year.
Yeah.
So why are we changing?
I don't know if it was everybody. It was people in safety sensitive positions. These are very costly tests. So what we're trying to do is do this when we believe there's a requirement to do it, or when this person is driving a 3-ton piece of equipment down the roadway, or working in the shop, let's say.
That's everyone.
Council's choice, you want to change may to will?
We may need to bring a budget adjustment if you do that.
How costly is it? What's the cost of testing?
I don't recall specifically.
I believe it's in excess of $300.
$300. Yeah.
So, and there is positions that, for instance, an office worker may, may not ever drive a piece of equipment or a vehicle. So there's, the word may in there is to allow for us to not incur that expense. If we change the word to shall, then, we would be doing that on every particular employee, no matter what.
So you're telling me it's $300 a person, so we're installing a culvert, somebody gets hurt, they drug and alcohol test, there's 5 guys on the crew, they do everybody, that just cost us $1,500.
That's correct.
And those may well be safety sensitive positions.
Yeah, exactly. If there's an incident and it's a safety sensitive position, but if there's an incident, depending on the severity of the incident, yes, they will be drug tested.
I just don't know why we changed it from last year that they went and got tested. There's laborers went, drivers, everything, grader operators, everybody went.
Those are safety sensitive positions and they still will be tested.
As per the Triander report, how many people did we hire last year?
I'll look that up. Please continue. I'll look it up.
Okay, so we'll come back to that one. The next one we'll go to is the bereavement leave, 4162I.23.
So council has not seen this policy yet. This was directed during the committee of the whole last meeting to develop it from what was just in the job protected leave section. So this will be council's first time looking at this particular policy. So if there's any amendments, we tried to capture the direction the best that we could from the discussion at the committee of the whole, and we're hoping that this is reasonable. So if there is items in here that council is not in agreement with, we could suggest, we would suggest not approving that particular one. Or if there's some minor amendments, we can tweak those today and have that approved.
Yeah, I discussed this policy with the CAO yesterday, and it's, yeah, the scope is kind of missing what my original intent was here. I think that we've got too many, we have to define family members better and either put a classification of non-family members in there also type of a deal. Because I think we dove way too much into detail as to who could be a relative here and who would result in getting 5 days of bereavement leave. Some of the people listed as family members, maybe it's 1 day or whatever. So I would like to revisit this policy. I committed that I'd come back with a definition of a family member, but I simply ran out of time last night.
So, Mr. Reeve, I can advise that the definitions that appear in this policy are taken from provincial employment policies. We use that as a benchmark.
That's correct.
I can appreciate that, but it's beyond the scope of where I would want to give 5 days of bereavement leave to an individual. Maybe 2 days or 3 days type of a deal.
So, Mr. Reeve, I am getting a message coming from Ms. Houston.
Anyone else has any comments on it?
Well, I have to agree with you. This is
like, do we want to get into foster parents
No.
and children of foster parents, and like it's just way too. So my suggestion would be to councils to leave this policy on the order table.
come back to it.
And come back to it at a future meeting. I think the only other area that's up for discussion is whether on page 124, and I think we're waiting to see how many people we hired last year, whether we want to change to A from May to, well, bearing in mind it could cost us $300 for every new hire that we hire.
Strikes me that there is at least 20 permanent full-time hires. And when I look at the complement of seasonal people, somewhere in the order of 20, and some of those positions turn over during the year. So, okay, yeah, Ms. Houston suggests 25 seasonal, so that would put us at about 45 to 50 people would need to be pre-employment drug tested.
To the tune of about $13,500.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, the only other policy is 4162F, whether we want to put that one on pause to alleviate Councillor Wick's concern.
I mean, if they're tracking it, it's tracked. If they're tracking it consistently, then it's a non-issue.
Okay.
So I should acknowledge that we've also done some benchmarking with other similar counties. As an example, our pre-employment drug testing would have been compared to Lac St. Anne and one or two others. And we're trying to work towards sort of an industry standard. Totally council's decision. If you want every employee to be tested, that's totally within your purview. I think it'll be costly. I guess the other thing I should acknowledge that if we don't pre-employment drug test somebody and we later find out that they have a dependency, if they didn't tell us about that dependency, we don't have the obligation to accommodate. It's only if they tell us. So there is a built-in safeguard there.
Okay, so the wording on the new policy is different from the wording that was in the old employment policy.
Yes.
The old employment policy does refer to a safety-sensitive position. The new policy does not relate to a safety-sensitive position. So I think if we're going to move forward with just the safety-sensitive positions, I would like to see the wording that's in our existing policy, that it does refer to safety-sensitive positions. Otherwise, our HR person has the latitude to decide whether or not somebody, there's no requisition here that says it has to be done for a safety-sensitive position.
One of the things that I would say, now I'll find that in our policy, but having the word may in there does allow us to do more testing than less testing. So my concern of just changing it to say will for safety sensitive positions, then if we have a concern of an employee that we may pick out during an interview process that we want to double check, we don't want that to be held against us. So if we're going to do that, one of my suggestions would be that that we put it in there that, yes, we put it at the discretion of the employer. Obviously from our safety side, we're doing it for all safety sensitive positions. We're not going to be doing less, but this wording was more designed to allow administration to do more testing than less testing.
Okay, I still maintain here though, is that we leave A in there, that a pre-employment drug and alcohol test may be required, and that would be applied to anybody we rehire, right?
Correct.
And then I suggest that we take the clause that's on page 174 of our existing employment policy, and we add that as an addition to our policy where any safety sensitive position does require a drug test.
Which clause is that on page 1? Oh, there. A? Drug and alcohol.
Yeah. That's the way I would go on this one.
Okay.
I can't see any concern with adding that in, so.
Yeah. So.
We'll put a firmer wording that the employee must or shall in there.
So
would council be prepared to approve 4162H.23 with the addition of section A from page 174?
Yep.
Because truthfully, I don't want to bring this back again.
No.
And nor do you want to see it again. Okay.
Okay. Council's okay with that?
What are you changing again? Sorry.
Page 174.
Under drug and alcohol testing,
The
section A.
very bottom A.
Final question, Rodney. Can we, RCMP are allowed to stop you for no reason and issue require you to blow. Are we able to perform a drug test on an employee at random?
Short answer, no. There has to be a reason for it. That's been tested in the courts a few times. If we terminate them based on that random drug test, then that would be, can't remember what the terminology is, but unjust termination. So we could test, but we wouldn't be able to do anything with that information. So that's been tested in the courts.
The training I've attended is somebody needs to observe them stumbling, slurring, carrying a bag full of empty bottles or a full bottle. There needs to be some sort of indication that there's impairment.
Yeah, and we have that on page 125, section B. So that would be 2B. So if we have reasonable grounds to believe that they're under the influence, yes, we can. Okay. So, and it's a pretty broad definition in there, so.
Okay, so any more questions, Council? So maybe we can do this in 2 stages here. Let's leave policy 4162F.23 and policy 4162I.23 out of the motion that's written here. And then we'll address policy 4162F.23 as a separate motion as amended. And then we'll address policy 4162I.23, direct administration to bring back. 4162I, the last
The
one.
bereavement policy.
The bereavement policy. Is that okay with council? So Irina, if you could get the new motion on the screen.
Well, where's that 41.6?
So Mr. Reeve, you were saying B, C, and D?
41?
No, I'm going to
No,
ask.
what's
We
the
approve
six?
B, C,
Way up there. Oh.
D, E,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep.
G,
F
and
doesn't-
H.
Yeah.
See what we gotta do now.
So you're taking
That's
out
what we
F
can.
and you're taking out I out of the recommended motion.
Yes.
Very good.
No, H is going to be as amended, but we'll do a separate motion for. Sorry, what did I say to take out?
The drug and
Yeah,
alcohol.
so H will be out. You said F needed to be dealt with separately, I think. Which,
You know?
Yeah, well, let's see what gets on the board
I
and then we'll work
understood
with that.
I understood that Councillor Wick was okay with the personal leave, so we don't
Yeah.
need to remove F.
Great.
E, F, G, not H. Not I. Seeking approval with the amendment. H. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see from here.
Well, you can walk up to him and grab him.
Mr. Reeve, I think this represents what you're looking for. Would you like to look at all three before council starts making motion?
No, let's deal with this one.
Okay.
So I'd be looking for a motion to approve these policies as presented. Councillor Naka.
Okay, I move that Lamont County Council approve policies 4162B, .23, 4162C, .23, 4162D, .23, 4162E, .23, 4162F, .23, 4162G, .23 as presented.
Any questions or concerns? Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried 5-0. Okay, now let's go on to 4162H.
Lamont County Council approved policy 41.
Sorry, Neil, just hang on a second here. Okay,
Mr. Reeve, if I can read the amendment that would be included, pre-employment drug and alcohol testing will be requested after a conditional offer of employment where the employee is applying for a safety-sensitive position. This includes employees whose job requires them to operate a county vehicle or equipment, or managers who are directly supervising safety-sensitive positions before employment to ensure compliance with this policy.
Okay, thank you. That's the wording for the amendment. So, okay, go ahead, Neil.
Okay, Lamont County Council approved policy 4162H.23 as amended.
Okay, questions or concerns? Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Yep.
It's carried 5-0. Yeah, I'm okay with that motion. Someone want to make that motion? Put it on the table. That's regarding the bereavement policy. Councillor Wick.
Yep. I make a motion that Lamont County Council direct administration to bring to a future council meeting policy 4162I.23 for further review.
Questions or concerns? Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried. Now, contained within each of these policies was a clause that policy 4162 is rescinded, I believe.
No, it wasn't actually. That would be a separate motion.
Each policy rescinds a section within 4162. However, we had a second motion that rescinded the overall policy.
That's correct.
I would suggest council rescind the overall policy. The only outstanding matter is bereavement, and we'll manage that accordingly. But okay. That's your decision.
Yep. So then I need a motion to rescind policy 4162. Councillor Naka.
I move that Lamont County Council rescind employee policy 4162.
Questions or concerns? Debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried 5-0.
Can I make a recommendation? Sure. Is there any chance that we could skip ahead to 7 bylaws, 7.1? Just because we have a delegation here and some of them might have personal leave or time that they're on, so. Is there a chance that we could go ahead, or we need, not everybody's back?
Not everybody's in the
Yeah, Mr. Reeve, our discussion was that the agenda was published with item 7.1 in the afternoon. Although there are some people that are here that want to leave sooner, there may be others who haven't yet arrived.
Okay.
So it's an unfortunate,
I was going to make a motion on it there, and hopefully, so people carry on with their lives here, but.
And here, I thought they were here to see the whole meeting, not just one particular part of the meeting.
Absolutely.
For sure, right? Okay. All right.
How many Red Bulls have you guys had?
Let's move on to item 5.8, then financial reserves policy amendments.
5.6.
6. Sorry, 5.6.
So, Mr. Reeve, you'll see in the legislative history that we shared this with council in the fall prior to recommending approval of the budget, so council was aware. Based on some of the conversation there, we brought it back in January for a committee of the whole type discussion for management of reserves and the reserve policy, which in essence is council's direction on how we're going to manage our short-term savings and our long-term savings. Council last saw this on February 8th, provided some direction, which Mr. Boyko is now bringing back for your consideration and approval.
So thank you, Mr. Tarnowski. So again, yes, this has been discussed at Committee of the Whole. Essentially, this is a housekeeping matter, bringing a number of policies into one and adding them as schedules so that they're a little easier managed by council and the public. So the recommendations that administration brought forth were essentially based on the budget discussions that council had, and that was to focus on the heartland infrastructure, economic development, specifically for non-residential assessment, and replacing assets at an optimal time to reduce future expenditures. There was a couple of recommendations from the February 14th Committee of the Whole to have the aggregate levy for both clay and gravel remain as they previously were, and to change the table of reserves to a more detailed format and add some descriptions for more information. So we've tried to provide that detail, and you'll see that is on page 206 and on. We added one page per reserve. And in some of them, there was, so for instance, on page 206, you'll see something that no regular funding was scheduled, and it's ad hoc contributions as per council direction. That is a change from the old reserves. Other ones, such as the page 208, the Municipal Parks and Recreation Reserve, fairly detailed in its purpose as well as its source of funding and the application of that funding. There are some that you'll see that have a short-term life. Page 207 is an example of that. That the duration of this grant is anticipated only between 2023 and 2025 to meet the strategic goals of number one of new businesses as partners in a growing community. So essentially what this is going to do, it will consolidate the number of policies into one, and we'll be bringing forward at the next council meeting the reallocation of those funds if this policy is approved today. And in addition to that, we'll be looking at the surplus from the 2022 year, which has been brought forward by the auditors so that council can allocate that as well. So
there was a reserve at the fire department for 200,000 from the Bruderheim fire. What's that mean? Where is that now? There's 200 grand that we got back from the Alberta government for the Bruderheim fire.
4146.
That is Page 225, we've recommended that that would stay in the fire operating reserve. 227,785 is the balance that was in there.
What's the balance, sorry?
It's on page 225, and the balance is $227,785. We're not making these changes today. We'll be doing that at the next meeting. This is just the recommended balances that will go into those when we do that motion next week with the, or next meeting with the 2022 surplus as well.
Rodney, I could be wrong here, but I had thought we had dealt with the $200,000 and moved it back previously. So could you have administration just investigate that?
Moved it back to.
Well, it was put into a fire reserve, and I thought that we had put it back somewhere else. Because that money, Councillor White, that money came from.
Alberta government paid us back. We had a bigger bill, but that's what they gave us, our share, and they instead of putting back in the general revenue that we were using, that's where the money come from in the first place. They started this reserve and they called it for equipment, but really it's not. It's money the county spent with the fire department that we got back, about 30% from the fire, from Alberta government. So I'm just wondering where it is and what it's called now.
I know we've discussed that before, and that money may have been moved back, but my recollection isn't totally.
Yeah, and I guess the discussion should be more around, do we want to keep that money in that reserve, or do we want to increase or decrease that balance going forward? There is two fire reserves. There's an operating reserve for 227,000. There's also emergency services reserve. That's on page 225. That's the fifth from the bottom, and there's 501,000 in there.
And what is that?
That's for fire and other emergency services replacement equipment. So again, reserves are money that council is setting aside for a future use. And so if the, now how it comes in there is, you know, again, up to council, but more what you would want to focus on that, what do we use this for in the future? So this is our savings accounts, and are our savings accounts appropriate for our future plans? And if not, this is the time to adjust those.
Okay, so if you are using any of that funding from the operating reserve to fund day-to-day activities of the fire department, or is that a one-off major event?
That would be up to council at a budget meeting of when this money comes out of this reserve to come into the operating. So the short answer is no, because the funding for that is coming from user fees and budget from regular taxes. So this money is money we've set aside that council wants to use for a future use. So maybe this, you know, you could say that this could be set aside for a future wildfire, or if there was an unexpected requirements.
Mr. Reeve, if I could, so councillor deals with reserves truthfully twice a year, and then in the case of exceptions. So the first time you deal with it when council is trying to achieve a balanced budget, and we've been taking money from operating reserves and capital reserves, council approves it, and then you will get a recap of the reserves from the auditors just prior to your approval of the mill rate, and that approval of the mill rate will generally, tax rate will generally be accompanied by those specific transfers from reserves. And in some cases transfers to reserves if we have a surplus.
That's correct.
The other time that council deals with reserves, and this is more of an ad hoc basis, like at the last council meeting where the purchase of the graders was slightly more expensive than we had anticipated, and council directed staff to ensure that those additional dollars were brought forward as a transfer from reserves before May 1st.
Councillor Naka?
This is a different reserve.
aggregate levy.
Okay, I know there are no amounts on this, but on pages 217 and 218 for the aggregate levy, gravel reserve and the clay reserve, it says amounts received from vendors through aggregate levy for gravel will be transferred to this fund annually. So why isn't that, I'd like that changed, transferred to this fund upon receipt. Wouldn't that be a better idea and simpler accounting? You know, previously we've had for a year and a half that no money was deposited into that account. It was just being used for everyday expenses. So isn't it easier and cleaner just you get clay levy, you know, payment, just put it in those funds? So that I'd like to see that wording changed from annually to upon receipt.
So Mr. Reeve, council is the one that directs the contributions to reserves. So if we did it upon receipt, then we would be bringing reports to you, maybe not every 2 weeks, but monthly, asking for you to make those contributions. Unless, of course, it was direction that whenever we get it, we put it in and we don't need council to provide that direction.
That's the direction.
That's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, and probably the only thing that I would caution against that is then there's less reporting to council on what's happening. So bringing this forward in the annual transfers is a little bit more easy for council to be able to say, we've received this money and we've put it into that reserve. And from an accounting standpoint, we actually have to record this as revenue first. And this, now we're getting into a little bit more of the complicated accounting side of it. We have to record it as revenue, as aggregate levy, and then we have to record all reserve transfers as an expense. So transfer from operating to reserves. So it's
easier to do it in aggregate.
It's easier to do it on an annual basis, and it's more transparent for council to actually see those reports on an annual basis.
Mr. Reeve, if I could remind that the triannual report does now show our quarterly collections on gravel and clay.
That's correct. And we could actually, if we just remove the word annually on there, then that might be, a little bit easier to do. We could even do it with the triannual reports. So I would like it to be a little bit more transparent for council as opposed to it just happening. So,
well, there's a major issue as to collection of our aggregate levies, both on the clay side and on the gravel side, and it's kind of maybe it's more reporting to council, but council's aware of what's coming in. And right now, unless we get that information on a monthly or triennial basis or quarterly basis, we really have no idea. And we have had an instance in the past where your predecessor decided that even though the policy stated it has to go into the aggregate levy, she determined that that wasn't the case, right? So,
yeah, that's correct. And that's why I would like to see this wording a little bit, like this is more transparent that, I wouldn't be able to do that. If it's more automatic, then I would have a concern with delegating that down to us in that manner. We are reporting more on like on the triennial basis. You're seeing that on there, and that's where we're able to provide that information. And just as an aside, this year's collection has been significantly better, and when you'll see that in the report coming forward when the auditors bring it forward as well.
Okay, so if you're going to report it, and this is Councillor Naka's concern, so we're going to leave it in his basis, but what if we put their transfer quarterly to this fund and report it on at the triennial report?
Or triannually, that we're not doing quarterly and triannually.
Yeah.
Take the annually out.
Yeah, if we just remove the word annually, that would actually probably make it a little bit more solid, and I think it would achieve both the accounting side and I think it would achieve what Councillor Naka's requesting there, so.
Okay, and my question again, those two, you've got them listed separately, but then when you give the total amount, it's aggregate and levy. Or they are going to be separate now?
It was council's request that they be separate.
Okay.
Okay, and you know what, I understand your question there, and that would just be, you know, we have clay levy fund reserve and I have aggregate levy fund reserve. I'm just going to rename those, or if your council's in agreement, aggregate levy fund gravel dash gravel and aggregate levy fund dash clay. Is that, would that?
Yeah, as long as they're kept separate.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
So, yeah, they are separate on there. The top one's gravel and the bottom one's clay. That's more of a clerical error on my part, so.
Okay.
Okay, and the only question I have is when we passed the disposal of equipment policy this morning, we said that sale proceeds were going to go into the vehicle and equipment replacement capital reserve. So should we not indicate that as far as source of funding?
Well, and that would be, we could put that as under ad hoc, and we actually had this discussion as to where it's more appropriate. We felt it was clearer in the disposal policy, and then that gives us the policies working together. So
Because there will be other sources.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, another comment I have is, so disposal of assets, it goes into the equipment reserve. What about those, that fire equipment, the trucks that were disposed of? Does that go into general equipment, or does that go into a reserve for fire reserve capital?
That would be in the emergency services capital one. So just because it's departmentally in that. Okay.
We saw one of our old gravel pits. It goes, where is that going to go?
If we were to sell a gravel pit?
Yeah. Well, what are properties that we have, you know, gravel pits or whatever else? Is that going to go into equipment, or where is that going?
I would suggest we create a new reserve. There's not really one here that is defined for that type of purpose because we don't have any money in there yet. So I would suggest that at the time that happens, we then define it and update Schedule A as needed, or sorry, Schedule B as needed.
I would think also if we sold a piece of property that could come in front of council as to where they wanted the particular money to go, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Any transaction of that size and nature, we would want to have direction from council at the time.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, council prepared to make the motion.
Mr. Reeve, given the change that has been suggested for the clay and the aggregate reserves, we would suggest that the motion should say as amended. Should say as amended.
Someone prepared to put the motion on the table to approve the financial reserve policy 7010.23.
That Lamont County Council approve financial reserve policy 1710.23 as amended.
Any questions or concerns? Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's carried 5-0. And then we need a motion to rescind the policies that are listed on your agenda package, page 2.
We're not in committee of the whole.
There was a typo in regards to the motions on the agenda page. The motions on page 199
Should say council.
should say, do have the right wording.
199.
Yeah, it's that Lamont County Council rescind the following policies.
Councillor Wick.
Make a motion that Lamont County Council recommend.
Just Lamont County Council rescind the following policies.
Oh, yeah. Make a motion that Lamont County Council rescind the following policies. Policy 59, Bridge Replacement Reserve, Policy 4144, Capital Reserve, Road Reserve, Policy 4147, Utility Reserve, Policy 4146, Emergency Services Reserve, Policy 4148, Capital Reserve, Policy 4145, Vehicle and Equipment Reserve, Policy 4157, Building Replacement Reserve, Policy 4158, Virtual Infrastructure Reserve, Policy 4174, Road Construction Reserve, Policy 4182, Aggregate Levy Fund Reserve, Policy 4176, R9 Infrastructure Reserve, Policy 4179, Industrial Development Professional Fees Reserve, Policy 4185, Church Reservations Reserve, Policy 4187, Municipal Operating Reserve, Parks and Recreation, Policy 4173, Library Reserve.
Thank you, Councillor Wick. Obviously, you were chosen for a reason there. You're the youngest and have the best lungs among us here.
Can you read that again?
Any questions or concerns? Any debate to rescind those motions, which are now all contained under the new financial reserves policy 7010.23? Seeing none, all in favor?
Yep.
It's carried 5-0. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.7. Policing priorities.
So, Mr. Reeve, Ms. Kennedy will present this one. You'll recall that the RCMP were here earlier in the year. I think it was at the last council meeting. We tested the directions that the RCMP detachments put forward, asked council to provide some direction or preference and priority to these, and here's what we're bringing back.
So, as we recall, on January 10th, we had 3 detachments attending the meeting, and they provided an update on current crime statistics, staffing, policing reports overview. That was a part of their biannual report that they come and present to council. Further to that, at the February 28th Committee of the Whole meeting, administration brought forward the summary of the concerns and priorities that were identified by the 3 detachments, and council reviewed them and came up with the following. So number 1, council put to increase police visibility to address 2 major areas of concerns. A, being crime property reduction, and B, road safety, including where possible rural roads. Number 2, community relations enhancement and public engagements through various community meetings, media releases, and participation in community events. And number 3, reduce traffic rules offenses, impaired driving, and distracted driving. So during their presentation, RCMP detachments asked for a feedback from council to see what their priorities are within this county, and this to be further communicated back to them and serve them as a guide to respond appropriately and accordingly to what council has expressed. What we are bringing forward the recommendation that Lamont County Council approve the policing priorities list as presented and further direct administration to communicate it to the Fort Saskatchewan, Two Hills, and Vegreville RCMP detachments. So if you want to review that list and see if I captured that as per council direction at the last meeting, we will communicate it further. Or if you want something changed, it's up to council.
Okay, thank you, Irina. So we discussed these policing priorities at the committee of the whole and made the recommendation to bring it to council. So I don't imagine, unless something's come up, where there's further discussion on these items. So if somebody's prepared to put the motion on the table. It's on page 2 of your...
Page 3.
3, sorry.
I can do
Lamont County Council approved the policing priorities list as policing priorities list as presented, and future direct administration to communicate it to the Fort Saskatchewan, Two Hills, and Vegreville RCMP detachment.
Any questions or concerns? Debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
It's carried 5-0. Thank you, council. Moving on to item 5.8, follow-up action tracking list.
So, Mr. Reeve, we continue to track our activities and performance against the resolutions that you make. You'll see that some items continue to be in progress, but many are complete. Rather than walking through the list in detail, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments on the follow-up tracking list?
Yeah, where are we at with that basement with the water well in it in Wostock? Where are we at with it?
Mr. Reeve, we received a quotation to address this on a simply fencing basis. We have not yet been able to estimate the specific cost of direct public workforces doing that. It's likely something that we would be able to assess in the spring. Anything to add to that, Darby? No.
In the meantime, what's keeping the kids from falling in there? Let's put a sign, wait till spring.
This has been on the agenda for
5 years. 4 years.
Council's direction was not for us to fence it, but rather for us to fill it. So although we have the estimate, we have not acted upon it.
That was my question, because we were talking about fencing and I don't think we ever discussed fencing. We discussed filling it in.
My recall was we discussed fencing, but that was not the desire of council. So we are waiting for the spring to be able to more fully assess.
You're supposed to put something in that well to seal it and then cover it up. And they got a quote from an outsider that's really high, and I'm pretty sure we can do it with our own forces. So that there's an open well in a basement. We got to do something quick.
Okay. That item isn't on the action list, is it?
It should be for this. Should be there.
Should have been here because so what my suggestion would be is that we accept the follow-up tracking or the follow-up action list as information. And then we have a separate motion for administration to bring back a report on the Wostock, what do we want to call it?
Vacant property. Derek had what they got to put in the well to seal it. And then
Hey, Mr. Reeve, it didn't appear on the action register because I believe that matter was dealt with in closed session. So it may be here in a somewhat generalized way.
Okay.
I think your suggestion is a good one.
Okay. Any other questions on the follow-up tracking list?
Nope.
Report lets council know where administration is on these activities. So if there's no further questions, I will accept a motion to accept the follow-up tracking list as information. Councillor Anaka.
I move that Lamont County Council accept the follow-up action tracking list as information.
Questions or concerns? Debate on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And now, do we want to make a motion to put the Wastic vacant property for administration to provide a report? Okay, the motion's on the board.
Mr. Reed?
Why do we need a report? We assessed it last year. We've looked at it for years. If we've got
So
three,
it's like the status of the matter?
Or do we just want to direct them to erect a snow fence for the time being?
Seal that well, and we got trucks, we got fill, we got everything, just do it.
Do it.
Before somebody drowns in there.
I guess that's why we need a report back, because we don't know what direction we want to take here.
Well, we can do it our own forces. They know what they put in the well. Derek knows what the contractor is gonna put it in the well and seal it. Cut and fill the basement. It doesn't have to be that good a fill. They're never gonna build a house on it anyway. If they do, they'll have to fix it themselves.
Okay, so let's direct administration to bring a report back, and then I'll put it on the order table and we can discuss it further at that time. Councillor Naka.
I move that Lamont County Council direct administration to bring back a report on the exposed well matter
In Wastok.
in Wastok.
I'm not voting in favor of this. I want that thing done. Not a report in 30 days and then.
So Mr. Reeves, the challenge that we had when we last brought this forward was that it was too expensive. Is council writing a blank check? Happy to do it.
I guess the thing is, if we've got 3 trucks and we've got drivers and one of the tractors is available and everyone else is working with ground, it's not really frozen, wouldn't this be a good time to spend a week and never address this matter anymore?
Very good. Please reconsider the motion you want to make. We're happy to
They
do
got
it.
a quote and it was a huge quote, and then Derek said he was looking into it. He was looking in for the quote. Whatever they seal the well with, the county can buy. You dump it in there, and we got a gravel pit right close to there. Just seal the well, do whatever it takes, and fill it.
Very good, Mr. Reeve. If the motion could read direct administration to bring closure to the exposed well matter, I'd be happy to direct staff to do
Within
it.
reason for money, so it's not an open checkbook.
So
The only, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Naka.
are we addressing the basement issue too?
No, you're just filling it in. So that's why if we're here, we have our Director of Public Works. Why don't we confide in his ability to know what's going on? Darby, do we have enough refuge and dirt and manpower to do this within the before the snow is gone?
So we have the material, we have the equipment, whether we have the expertise to decommission a well, I can't say for sure, but we can look into it and find out.
So if that's the only part is the decommissioning of the well, then maybe we make the motion, we have somebody decommission the well, like we said we were gonna, 4 other meetings we've had about it, and then let our forces use our refuse and fill it in.
Do we have to remove the basement concrete?
Well, why? It's a vacant land.
Derek said he can decommission, he knows what to use. So our own staff can, and there's a pit, we got the Brinko pit right there.
Before I make a motion, I think the primary thing we have to do here, because it's a provincial requirement, we got to decommission that well. We're 6 weeks away from probably the spring thaw happening here, or that would allow us to probably do that on an adequate basis. We just can't nilly-willy dump dirt down that well or whatever. So to say to do it immediately is not feasible. I think that what we have to look at here is, I would like to see the report that was presented to council historically to find out the cost of this thing. And if you want to put a time limit on this thing to have it on the next meeting agenda, that's fine. That's 2 weeks down the road here.
Why didn't you bring Derek in? Derek said that he can do it.
The
No, this
contractor
isn't-
was way out on his price, he was way out to lunch.
This isn't an agenda item right now. This is a proposal to get this thing back on the agenda. So really, we shouldn't be discussing this matter as an agenda item. But we can put a motion on the books directing administration how we want them to manage this thing going forward here. So a motion, as I believe Councillor Anaka made that motion, that's on the board. Do you want to put a time limit on it? Or you can simply revise that motion that it's put on the agenda for the next meeting. And then we know that we have the time limit on it. Okay.
We'll make best efforts, Mr. Reef.
Sorry?
We'll make best efforts.
Okay.
Want me to read that again?
Yep.
I move that Lamont County Council direct administration to bring back a report with recommendations on the exposed well matter in Wostock to the March 28th, 2023 regular council meeting.
Questions or concerns? Debate on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, it's carried 5-0. Okay, my understanding is lunch is here. So we will recess the meeting at 12:04 p.m.